Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share uh, my personal views and feedback on the Islamabad security dialogue that concluded recently. And I would also like, apart from sharing feedback, I'd like to share my personal suggestions, which I hope the organizers and planners of this dialogue will take into consideration at least before the next iteration is hopefully held. The purpose of sharing these views and suggestions is that, as an observer and long-time analyst on regional and international geostrategic affairs, it is important to provide neutral and impartial input so that the longer ulterior motive of having something monumental and unifying can be achieved. Or what am I referring to will be explained in the coming few minutes. So, first of all, before I begin, I'd like to congratulate and appreciate the National Security Division of Pakistan, as well as the Islamabad Policy Research Institute, and four other think tanks that were part of the organizing committee, and they were responsible, the five of them, for partaking in this conference. Now, before I go into it further, I'd just like to explain, just for people who may be unaware, as we all know that IPRI is part of the National Security Division, the Institute of Regional Studies and Islamabad Strategic Studies Institute both come under MOFA, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The ISSRA NDU comes under the Armed Forces, and CAS, as we all know, comes under the Pakistan Air Force. And each of them, for their own part, are doing a wonderful job bringing out scholarly publications and have a diverse panel of men and women, exceptional research scholars from various backgrounds, doing a fantastic job in their own right. But just to make it clear, the people who were part of this were from institutions which are state patronized and state sponsored. So basically, this was an intergovernment effort. There was no participation by any semi-official or private think tank. So I have my own strong views on that, but I'm not going to include those in this particular video. Now, coming to an important description which I read online, if you browse through Oxford Dictionary, it defines the terms echo chamber as, quote, an environment where a person only encounters information or opinions that reflect and reinforce their own, unquote. Now, if you go to GCF Learning, which is a prominent digital skills website, they have this very interesting explainer video. It's quite engaging, actually. It explains how echo chambers can create misinformation and distort a person's perspective. They're unable to, consider an opposing viewpoint and discuss complicated topics. And they say that, quote, they're fueled in part by confirmation bias, which is the tendency to favor info that reinforces existing beliefs, unquote. So, as we all understand, echo chambers are spaces where you don't come out with anything that was exceptionally or generally stimulating as far as intellect is concerned, and there was, uh, in part or a whole, general agreement as to what is being said or spoken there too. And that is the perception which I got from the Islamabad security dialogue, that while the skeleton of this dialogue, the planning, the process, the communications, the logistics, etc., everything was perfect. And there was a robust mechanism in place to ensure smooth coordination and execution. I found the optics and the setup to be fantastic. So kudos to that. The meat which is supposed to cover that skeleton, I found it to be uh, mediocre at best. Unfortunately, I had, maybe at a personal level, I had extremely high hopes from this conference, considering the fact that it was organized under the aegis of Dr. Moeed Yusuf, who is a respected and competent special assistant to the PM on matters of strategic policy planning. So this was something which Uh, for me, at least, as an individual person, a one man speaking his views was not as diverse or vibrant as I was hoping it would be. Why am I saying that? Because when if you live in Pakistan and you watch news channels such as PTV World and Indus News, or you come across online web shows or people engaging in strategic policy or security discourse on Twitter, etc., especially the intelligentsia, which usually resorts to tweeting, you see these variety of topics that are discussed in routine. For example, we know that whether it is online or offline, Afghanistan, CPEC, India, China, great power, economic diplomacy, XYZ. These are the buzzwords that are spoken of multiple times in the thousands each day, and they are commented upon, written upon, debated upon, podcasted upon, if I may use that term, by multiple think tanks across Pakistan. So there is nothing unusual about that. So what I found in the Islamabad Security Dialogue was a repeat of that. And personally, for me, not judging anyone, I'm not in a position to do that, and certainly I have no authority to do that. I found it to be, but I do have the right as a citizen to share my feedback and as an informed observer, that the proceedings were not intellectually stimulating as they should have been. Just let me give you an example. There were 5 sessions, including two addresses by two prominent chief guests. So, keeping those 5 sessions in view, almost all of them were by people who were or are, and perhaps again will be, part of the federal government. You have one or two exceptional people, who the odd one out, who have never been in government and they are part of the academic fraternity. I won't take names here. Now, as far as foreign speakers are concerned, you had people who were multiple people from or based in the US, and one from China. There was no speaker, no representative, no diplomat, no academic, no scholar from the Gulf region, Europe, anywhere in Europe, Africa, the Gulf region, obviously the Middle East, Indian Ocean region, Southeast Asia, no one. And not even Central Asia and South Asia. I mean, if you want to go into that. So keeping India further aside, because we obviously it would be imprudent to expect any Indian academic to be invited. There was nobody from a country such as Nepal or Sri Lanka, which obviously have good ties with Pakistan. There was nobody from Afghanistan. There was nobody. I mean, keeping the fact that Afghanistan is a conventional topic of debate, still there was nobody from there. There was no one to talk about, for example, now coming to some important observations. Again, there were the dignitaries and the luminaries, all of whom are sincerely respected and admired, whom I had the pleasure to listen to live throughout because I was eagerly following the proceedings. And I found that they were mostly engaged in extempore discussions, and perhaps some of the questions that were asked to them were not prepared in advance. So that was a major turnoff. I do believe that when you're inviting people to talk on certain topics, then you not only have to give them one major theme and then leave them to it to decide, of the moderator to decide what to ask them. You have to have certain subtopics or special subjects assigned to them so that they come prepared with their notes, they have presentations, and they have some papers to present, so that apart from them speaking out what they intend to convey to the audience in a somewhat fluid manner, they can also share copies of electronic copies of their papers or presentations for the people to download from the official website, which happens to there was an official web is an official website of Islamabad Security Dialogue. None of that was there. And so if you just live tweet or live stream something on YouTube, I believe that you there are good optics over there, but that does not fulfill the overall objective of trying to promote the and lay out exactly the sort of thoughts which, in my personal view, I'm sorry to say, most of the people were not talking in a coherent manner, apparently because they were not being guided properly by the moderators of the sessions. So I'm not going to take names here. This is a general observation, and which was I found to be persistent throughout. Coming to the next important point which I'd like to make, and that is that when you hold such type of conferences, it is important to bear in mind. Let me just give you some contemporary examples, some noteworthy examples. We have the Raisina Dialogue, which is hosted by Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi, which is a private think tank, an independent think tank. It has receives occasional funding from the Ministry of External Affairs of India, but it's not actually governed by it. So ORF holds the annual Raisina Dialogue, which is one of the region's largest multi-stakeholder platform for discussions on a variety of security-related and geopolitical issues. And it has an impressive lineup and proceedings thus far as I've been seeing. They organize this dialogue annually with the assistance and support of the MEA, and they bring people from multiple countries, multiple continents on a variety of topics pre-assigned to them and pre-planned. Then we have to our west, we have the Manama Dialogue in Bahrain, which is organized by the UK-based International Institute for Strategic Studies (IISS). Manama Dialogue and also its other counterpart in Southeast Asia, which is the Shangri-La Dialogue held in Singapore. Both of them are organized in two different places by the IISS of UK. And that is also an independent platform for people of the government and non-government sectors, civil society, academia, business community, industrial community, tech leaders to come together and discuss issues which have been assigned to them pertaining to the broader and generic topic of security. So we also have the GAL dialogue, which is held by the Sri Lankan Navy in association with the Ministry of Defense of Sri Lanka, and it is focused specifically on maritime security. Then we have the world famous Munich Security Conference held since the 60s, late 60s in Germany. So, and that is one of a kind. It is the world's largest security conference and the most authoritative so far. So when we talk about contemporary or some extraordinary security dialogues, then the most important things you have to keep in mind is that apart from speakers of national origin and government representatives, you need to have people from multiple countries. I mean, I've never come across any security dialogue which has participants from countries in the single digits. I mean, only US and Chinese representatives were a part of Islama security dialogue. The fact that there was no representative from other regions, and just to give you an example, there was not even a, a proper representation from within Pakistan, let alone as mostly the organizers themselves nominated their own internal representatives to come and moderate or either speak on this panel. So, again, I'm sorry to say this, but I have to put it up front because I intend to share my personal opinion in the hopes that the next iteration is hopefully better than this one. So I found this to be an echo chamber, and I'll tell you why. Because ultimately, I had this perception, my individual perception, that everyone over there, keeping in view a few divergent viewpoints on the side, everyone was mostly agreeing to what each other was saying. So that's a big no-no for me. When everyone is agreeing to mostly everything in a general platform, then that is not a place where actual intellectually stimulating discourse can be held, and that really puts you off. So here are my, without further ado, these were just some of my observations. Here are now my suggestions, which I hope can be taken in positive letter and spirit, so that as I mentioned earlier, things can be improved before the next iteration is held. So number one, uh, promote greater inclusivity. Give space to semi-official and private think tanks in the organizing process. I am going to take some names over here at the Liberty because I am a private citizen. I am not employed or associated with any of the think tanks I am going to name. I am a contributor to some of them on and off, but I'm not employed by anyone. So I have that sort of impartial status and um, liberty to take names. We have the Strategic Vision Institute in Islamabad. We have the Center for Strategic and Contemporary Research. We have the CRSS. We have the IPS, Institute of Policy Studies. We have the CGSS. in Islamabad. We have the CSSPR in Lahore by Dr. Rabi Akhtar, which is doing a fantastic job, by the way. We have a CISS, which is based in Islamabad, and we have the PIPS by other scholars. And so there is a plethora of think tanks, which some of them are semi-official, some of them are totally private owned. But the fact of the matter remains that ultimately you have to realize that security dialogues, mostly in the contemporary environment we are in, they're organized by one sole entity: IISS in Bahrain and Singapore, ORF in India, Sri Lankan Navy in Sri Lanka. You have one organizer, because that one organizer is responsible for taking the onus of everything that is going on over there and having a sort of impartial status. Now, when there are multiple people coming together for the same objectives, then obviously in Urdu there is saying कि खिचड़ी पक जाती है, कि there's the too many cooks who spoil the broth. So whether it was mistaken or it happened just out of chance, I found that there was nothing synchronous going on as far as the unity of purpose is concerned. Everything was everything appeared ad hoc. I mean, apart from the fact that yes, there were stalls and booths, but again, this begs the question: there were stalls and booths for those organizers and think tanks, respected think tanks and influential think tanks of Pakistan. And mind you, one of those think tanks is barely a year old, and they were labeled as a leading think tanks of Pakistan, which I believe, I'm sorry to say, that giving space to only a select coterie of think tanks, which are state owned and state patronized, and promoting publicity content and describing themselves of their own accord, describing themselves as leading, I think that's intellectually dishonest, and it doesn't look nice on research scholars and people who are trying to promote their individual or collective viewpoints, because that's for the people and media reporters and the intelligentsia to decide whether or not they are leading think tanks. You can't describe yourself, or you can't encourage media houses to describe yourselves as leading. Number one, that's a fallacious argument, and number two, you can't just promote your own selves within your own close group of circle and then say that this was a whole of nation approach. No, it was not a whole of nation approach. It was not a comprehensive dialogue. It was a whole of government approach nonetheless, but you can't call it a whole of nation approach. Now, there are some other factors which I'm going to say. There were in the suggestion number one, which is promote greater inclusivity. Give space to semi official and private think tanks in the organizing process. Open space for academics, policymakers, businessmen, private sector, and diplomats to talk in a dialogue. You see, you can't just have people who have been in the government or who plan to go in the government to come and talk about issues. There are people who belong to the private sector, some analytical corporations, defense industries, people who are in the media who can talk on, who have scholarly takes on many of the contemporary and strategic geopolitical issues affecting Pakistan. People from within Pakistan and beyond US and China, such as South and Central Asia, the Gulf, Southeast Asia, Africa, and Europe, those voices need to be included in the future. Um, Foster a culture of due courtesy, whereby audience contributions using assigned hashtags are amplified by the organizers online or during the proceedings. So, we saw that in Islamabad Security Dialogue, they promoted this hashtag Idea for Pakistan and another hashtag Ideas for Pakistan. And by tagging, they encouraged people to share their ideas of Pakistan. And to be a fair observer, and not to sound as if I'm holding a personal complaint or grudge, I'm absolutely not. Um, Apart from one or two people, I see a stream of people who have been sharing their thoughts and ideas in short videos on Twitter for the organizers, but they were not even acknowledged, let alone their content was retweeted or shared. So I think that's quite discouraging, and it puts you off that when you're of your own decision, you encourage people to share their ideas, and you just project one or two of who are overly praising of your efforts. So I think that gives an impression that if you unless you are going above and beyond to try to deeply appreciate the organizers, then you won't really get hurt. I think that really sends out the wrong messages. So at least to me, that sent out very wrong messages. Then encourage members of the opposition political parties to participate in and talk, especially lawmakers who are part of defense and foreign affairs committees in both houses of the Pakistani parliament. We have many people now. To be fair, the Islamabad Security Dialogue hosted Senator Mushahid Hussain Sayyid, who is from an opposition party, and Ms. Hina Rabbani Khar, a former foreign minister of Pakistan. Both of these dignitaries are immaculate speakers and scholars in their own right, and they belong to opposition parties. So, on that front, yes, thank you to the organizers for inviting them. But these are the people we see now and again. We needed some representatives who are the current from the current lawmaking lot, who are part of defense and foreign policy making, to have been a part of this, to if not be a part of the speakers, at least they should have been made part of the proceedings. And it is a conventional norm, by the way, in countries such as India and elsewhere, that members of the opposition, I mean, I've seen people like Shashi Tharoor comment on national conferences organized in India about policy making, because such people, they have these views which are beyond party lines, and they talk in the larger national interests. So if there are any concerns that someone will raise political scoring points or try to unnecessarily criticize the prime minister, etc., etc., these concerns need to be shared. When you're bringing together people, you need to bring your people into one house. You need to give them the platform and tell them that we are here, this is a whole of nation approach, and to make it truly inclusive, we are going to make it inclusive. So that inclusivity was not there. So point number one, I complete that there is a need to promote greater inclusivity. Now coming to my second and last point, which is broaden the intellectual horizon. I think there is a strong need to expand the canvas of topics to include discourses on maritime security, cyber security, the Israeli Arab rapprochement which is taking place in the Middle East, which, mind you, that is an elephant in the room. Pakistan will have to address today or tomorrow. So there was no discussion or debate about that at all. Power competition going on in the Horn of Africa. The Red Sea is becoming increasingly, there are fears it is going to become increasingly militarized, and functioning of multilateral institutions, their efficacy, whether or not the SCO is performing as per Pakistan's hopes and expectations, membership status of Indian Ocean Rim Association, why Pakistan needs to be a part, how we can go about preventing India from vetoing its membership, and the ironic fact that France and Germany seek observer status, but Pakistan cannot in its own neighborhood. These are the topics which should have been discussed, but again, all we heard was CPEC, Afghanistan, terrorism, economic diplomacy, Belt and Road Initiative, well-being, climate change. That's it. So yes, some of these, such as for example climate change and CPEC and economic diplomacy, these are good buzzwords. They make for good trending topics, but ultimately there was nothing substantive to come out of that, especially when you dedicate an entire segment of government officials, mind you, to come and speak on a panel almost composed entirely for PR purposes. That's very wrong. You can have one government representative in each panel, but to bring together multiple of them in one session, almost exclusively dedicated to them, it seemed more like a political PR stunt than actual effort for meaningful academic discourse. And then debates and discussions on topics of conventional discourse should be minimized, in my personal view, to make way for focusing on items that are otherwise ignored by the mainstream media. Obviously, our mainstream media, especially here in Pakistan, is very insensitive toward issues of contemporary and strategic discourse in Pakistan. Apart from the usual defense updates and military updates, etc., etc., you don't hear any you don't see any columns or hear any debates on talk shows, whether it is on PTV World or Indus News or some other Urdu or some Urdu language even talk shows about SCO or cyber security or maritime security. You don't have that. It's the same traditional and continental mindset with which we are discussing topics which are trending, but not necessarily those which are unconventional. So that's a no-no. And then finally, as I suggested earlier, publish papers and presentation slides prepared by speakers. Extempore discussions should be discouraged. And I think one of the most important highlight of this whole dialogue was there was a lot of extempore talk going on, apart from prepared speeches by the two prominent chief guests. So, um, Before I conclude this, I would just like to reiterate that these are my personal views, and I hope that the planners and the organizers of this inaugural Islamabad Security Dialogue will take these suggestions positively and will not take them in negative light. And I hope that my larger personal intent of trying to share honest, unbiased feedback so that the next iteration is even more improved. I pray for that, and I hope that we all and some of the other stakeholders can be taken on board, or if not, then at least the existing ones, or at least one of them, should have the courtesy to and sagacity to incorporate these suggestions and expand, move beyond the current intellectual horizon prevailing in Pakistan, so that we can truly become a country that is able to host diverse thought leaders of various backgrounds, listen to their views, acknowledge them, if not agree with them, and then share our story across. But if we bring together a group of like minded people, mostly like minded people of our own choosing, I mean, I wouldn't like to take names, but I saw many of them who are mostly pro Pakistan, the foreigners I'm talking about. So you don't need that. You tell people, come over here, tell us what can be improved, and what are your views on our region. And they don't necessarily need to comment on Pakistan, but if you constantly ask them, what do you think of Pakistan, what do you think of Pakistan, I think that doesn't serve the purpose. Your purpose, our purpose as the citizens of Pakistan, is to host thought leaders over here. We don't want their validation or their evaluation or their feedback. We want them to talk about topics which we have assigned to them and hear their views. If they consider it important to comment on Pakistan in between, that's up to them. So, once again, before I conclude, deep and sincere appreciation to the government of Pakistan, especially the NST and the organizers. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, it is about time that to truly move beyond partisan lines, we have to be open, we have to be inclusive, and we have to move beyond conventional debates. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.